Hello and welcome to today's panel, where we'll focus on opportunities for the mining industry's leadership, supporting electric vehicles and sustainable technologies for mining. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which we all meet and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to thank IMARC and particularly Shireen for providing us the opportunity to speak today. My name is Michelle Keegan and I'm representing State of Play, where I work directly in the Electric Mine Consortium, of which has been in place for the last 18 months, established to rapidly accelerate electrification through collaboration between mining companies and energy-related suppliers. Here with me on the panel, I'm very excited to have two experienced leaders in industry, Michael Nossal, the Chair of IGO, and Mark Norwell, the CEO of Perenti. While operating different types of companies, the direct overlap is their collective drive of the decarbonisation outcome at the operations where they both work. While their greater overlap, however, is their focus on enabling and driving electrification in the wider industry and beyond. So I'd like to kick off today's panel by asking you both to introduce yourselves and your companies. I'd love to hear more about what your companies are doing to support the uptake of electric vehicles and sustainable technologies, and what you see as most important personally in this area. Michael, IGO has really pivoted their strategy recently, and it would be great to start with you. If you want to cover off.
Thanks, Shireen, and thanks also for to IMARC for hosting this panel. My name is Michael Nossal, as Michelle mentioned, and I'm the non-executive chairman of IGO, and I also chair a mid-tier gold mining company called Norwell, based in London. I think that I've been involved in the mining industry for 35 odd years, and over that period there's been an enormous transition, and most recently I think a really increased and renewed focus on ESG. From that perspective, IGO is quite, I think, quite unique and quite prescient in the sense that in 2017, we pivoted our strategy from being a gold and base metals company to focusing on the products critical for enabling clean energy. So that really, we saw the opportunity, or the company led by Peter Bradford at that stage saw the opportunity that was going to arise out of the transition to a zero carbon environment, requiring significant investment in new technologies, significant investment in renewables, and that will all need metals, and they continue to be required to be mined. It's not possible to achieve that sort of zero goal with recycling or non-mined raw materials. And so IGO positioned itself about 4 or 5 years ago now to really change its strategy to focus on providing the products that can enable that transition. So with that, I suppose we have over the last couple of years made that full transition to now being a company that is involved in lithium through Greenbushes mine, and downstream with lithium hydroxide plant in at Kwinana, and also the Nova nickel copper mine. I think I'll just make one other comment by way of introduction to IGO, because I think it's really important in this transition and in the way that the industry is now focusing on ESG matters and on helping the world sort of transition to a zero carbon environment, that this isn't sort of, the companies don't just pay lip service to these ESG matters, that it really comes to represent the core of the company. And I think an investor recently in an impact fund that was considering an investment in various mining companies said what they look for, and this is a sort of something that stuck very clearly in my mind, they look for where the company has at its core its ESG credentials are aligned with its purpose. And getting that alignment is really essential in moving forward. So IGO is working very hard to reduce its own carbon footprint, as well as power those metals. I think I'll leave it there, Michelle, to allow Mark to introduce himself.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And very interesting point, really, the alignment with the purpose, which really does fundamentally, force us all to think more about, what is our purpose and how we're delivering on that. So yeah, Mark, it'd be great to hear more from yourself. I think equally, Perenti has also made some pretty impressive strategic changes recently. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about that and your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Michael, as well. So my name's Mark Norwell, Managing Director and CEO of Perenti, and Perenti was really formed on the back of the sort of coming together of Ausdrill and Barminco at the back end of 2018. And I guess, as Michelle's outlined, we sort of have evolved the business since that coming together of the two larger organisations. And the way we're formed is we've got sort of three key sort of business areas. I guess our traditional contract mining businesses covering Ausdrill, Barminco, AUMS and AMS. We then have a mining services group of businesses, predominantly BTP, and prior to Christmas, Min Analytical, which we sold in December. And then the new business that we launched middle of last year called idoba. And idoba is our digital and technology focused business, which is a combination of some small acquisitions that we've sort of worked through over the last 18 months, Sandpit Innovation, Improvement Resources and Optica. And it really is around sort of looking at, I guess, the shift in the industry, as Michael spoke about, the sort of focus on ESG, decarbonisation, and really with that sort of platform, we're seeing the industry change, and we're going to see that change be even more significant. So it's a real focus for us with idoba, and using that as our vehicle to shift the business, but at the same time combining it with our sort of expertise that we have in contract mining, and bring that sort of digital technology capability combined with mining processes, and look at how we can actually sort of influence the change with the industry and support the industry shift. And I guess just briefly, my background, 25 plus years in mining, always been on the contracting side, if you like, of the industry. And I'm pretty excited to see the change in the industry and also what the mining services part of the industry can sort of do in bringing that together. So pretty excited about the future and what Perenti can do to support the change in the industry.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I think one of the interesting points that both of you have commented on is really, or indirectly or directly, is the wider project life cycle and value chain that you both participate in. So, Mark, as you spoke about the digital capability, this doesn't really look at just the mining areas. It looks at mining and influencer and understanding for processing. And equally, Michael, IGO is more than just a mining company. There is the downstream processing as well. I was wondering if either of you could comment on a bit more about your thoughts on leadership, given that broader value chain focus that you both have, and also within that, maybe the impact across the project life cycle, from new mine development all the way through to processing.
Mark, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, happy to lead off there, Michael. Certainly, I think, Michelle, in terms of the sort of full value chain, the life cycle, I think to really change the carbon footprint, drive efficiencies of the overall ore body, you really have to look at it from sort of end to end. And so when we look at our technology and digital sort of service offering, we really are focused at sort of looking at how do we sort of digitise, optimise sort of all aspects of the value chain. And I guess one sort of area that sort of we're working on and around the leadership aspect is the Electric Mine Consortium, which is a combination of mine owners and service companies, and sort of really looking at how we sort of tackle all aspects of the value chain. And in terms of the leadership that we bring to that, I think a couple of key areas, certainly in my role, is providing support to our workforce, looking at what's the skills that we need to develop and sort of bring in to the industry. I think importantly, it's around looking at the diversity in different ways of thinking. And I guess if we really want to tackle decarbonisation, we're not going to be able to do that through just sort of looking at how we've operated previously. We can't just optimise each area of the value chain. We have to optimise across the value chain. And that's going to require different ways of working and different thinking. And in terms of, I guess, that diversity with IDOBA, 90% of our business, or one of the business we acquired there, has a neurodiverse background for our people to really bring in that diversity of thought. And I think that's going to be very critical in terms of how we provide leadership to shift the industry. And I guess the final point that I'll just touch on is then around the sort of the data analytics and the simulation, and that really goes to the overall value chain. And one of our key platforms that we have, Acumen, is sort of looking at providing, I guess, that enabler and that tool to the industry to really assist in sort of, I guess, challenging traditional ways of working and optimising the holistic value chain.
Well, and look, I think I'd add to that in terms of leadership by saying I actually believe it is still really important to look right across, or it is really important to look right across the full value chain of the business. And the industry has always sought to reduce costs, and quite often costs go with carbon emissions and efficiencies. But I agree completely, Mark, we're going to have to move it to the next level and think differently around it. And our industry has always been slightly slow to adapt to change. I think it's a high capital industry. It's risk of trying new things and changing technologies has always been quite difficult in the industry. But I think that it's really important that leadership now step up, or continue to step up, because I do believe it's a situation of change, and take those difficult decisions to try out the new technology. I think the Electric Mine Consortium is really important example of that, because I think that no one company can achieve all that much on its own in terms of this transition. And I've always looked at competition in this in the industry as being a competition for access to resources, to the actual mineral resource, rather than competition within the within the technologies then associated with extracting the value from that mineral resource. So I think collaboration is a really important part of what we're going to have to continue to do moving forward. I think the industry has a great example in the safety space over the last 20 to 30 years. In my time in the industry, safety has completely changed. People's approach to safety and the way that we focus on making sure that we don't injure people in the industry has completely changed. And I think there's been a lot of collaboration in that space. So there's a great example of how collaboration can work. I think the Electric Mine Consortium is another example. It's just too big a chunk for one company to develop all the technologies and all the thinking associated with moving underground and open pit mines to a full electric future. And therefore, by collaborating, I think it's going to provide us a lot more fruit. I think the other leadership point, though, coming back to value, purpose, and values, is that engagement. And I agree with you very much, Mark, is getting people to think outside the box and getting people to come up with ideas. And for that, they have to be fully engaged in the business and believing what they're doing is the right thing. And I think IGO has, well, based on the sort of annual surveys that we do of our people, I think we've progressed quite well in terms of engaging people in our purpose for that. And that's having some interesting impacts in terms of the ideas that people come up with, really trying to deconstrain people's thinking in bringing up ideas to help us, with the transition over the time. I think another example of what we've done in leadership at IGO, which is is a good example, is looking at how to progress towards carbon neutrality for the operations that we control. And we discussed a lot and thought a lot about how to think about carbon pricing, and whether it's now essential to think about that in any investment decision, and put effectively a factor in the carbon being produced by whatever the investment is resulting in. But at IGO, we've done something slightly different as well, in order to project a certainty to our shareholders around the cost of this transition, and in order also to help generate the idea base from our employees around reducing our carbon footprint. IGO has put in place a shadow carbon price, which is applied to the operation. So we effectively, there's a pool of money that comes from the corporate centre charging the operations for the carbon that is produced. And then that pool of money we apply at the moment, we've got a carbon price of around $60 a tonne, so reasonably high in an Australian context, but not high in an international context, and not high in where we think probably carbon pricing will go eventually. But we use that to create a pool of funds, and that pool of funds is then available for the carbon reduction projects that are initiated. And some of those, may also be carbon offset projects, because I think offsets are also a key part of getting to net zero.
Okay, thank you both. And there's certainly a number of points that you've both just captured down, and I'd love to dig into a few more of those as we speak further. You've also both mentioned the Electric Mine Consortium. Maybe just a little reflection myself from what I'm seeing from working directly in there and where we are all involved. We've certainly, we believe we've seen a great example of collaboration, which has really been applied practically at what we're all acknowledged as a pretty important time in the industry. In our experience, we've never actually seen this level of engagement and sharing between companies in such a short space of time. And this, we think, really does come down to a focus on a few important things. And those include that, we're focused on the high value challenges. So what is really going to crack open electrification? What is it that's stopping us from moving forward faster? There's also a broad applicability across all businesses in where we focus. But there's also clear vision, leadership and accountability by each of the mining companies and mining services companies involved. And the whole group itself is ready to pivot. They're agile, that they pivot as required as the group delivers more, as they start to look at the next challenge. And so as a result, consortium members have delivered some significant wins in their internal businesses. But maybe just continuing on the theme of collaboration and the imperative to really use a more collaborative model to deliver on carbon emission targets, and whether that's getting to carbon neutral, carbon zero. The drivers for change in the industry have really accelerated significantly, even just in the last 6 months, and they will continue beyond that. Maybe Mark, just to pick up a bit more on Michael's point around safety, and we've been going quite a few minutes now. We've not mentioned COVID at all. Maybe if you want to talk a bit about, the COVID response that Perenti has focused on, and how you've seen collaboration through that, and how you may be able to continue to leverage that further.
Yeah, maybe it's sometimes we're starting to get used to COVID, given we've gone sort of 10 or 15 minutes without mentioning it, as you say, Michelle. But I guess just, building on from Michael's point about safety sort of over the last number of decades in the industry is certainly a great example of collaboration, where sort of all mining stakeholders have come together and really focused on improving the health and well-being and safety of our people. And if you think about sort of COVID, 2 years ago now, where there was a real burning platform about how does the industry work together to ensure the continuity of the industry through a global pandemic. And you have to sort of say that what was done by the industry and the relevant industry bodies was fantastic to continue operating. Obviously, we've still got challenges and sort of further challenges coming on the back of COVID, but I guess if you sort of think through that collaboration, and it really demonstrates that when the industry holistically sets its mind to achieve an outcome, it knocks it out of the park. And if we think about where we are today and decarbonisation and the focus on ESG and the need to really move quickly, I guess we have a burning platform there at the moment, and it really comes down to how do we collaborate on a really important global sort of focus. And I think sort of building on Michael's example regarding safety, I think if we can continue, and there's good signs of where that's starting to occur, but if we can really accelerate that collaboration, I think it's going to be critical to achieve the collective outcome. If one organisation wins, it doesn't mean the industry wins. So we need to make sure we work together there. And I think the example of the Electric Mine Consortium, where there's mine owners and mining service providers, is a good example of bringing sort of diversity to the table. I think even Michelle having the invite for myself from a mining services company for this call is a good example of how we can actually, excuse me, collaborate in terms of moving forwards. I guess one of the things that we also need to be mindful of as we work through that collaboration is, and invariably people get into sort of IP and sort of commercial terms, and that's always going to be important. But I guess how do we use commercial terms to support collaboration and not hinder collaboration across the industry moving forward? So hopefully where we are, it's another burning platform, and we can look back and say, well, this is a galvanising moment for the industry to decarbonise.
I think the burning platform point is a really good one, Mark. The and you know, driving leadership to make the changes, and in a way, that's a continuation of a trend again of the last 20 or 30 years. If you think about it from a community point of view, you know, right now, probably more than any time in the past, having the sort of social license worked out with the communities in which we operate is really important. But that social license is more complex. It's no longer just local issues. It's now the global issue of decarbonisation as well. And the imperatives coming from our local communities, from regional governments and national governments, and also from our shareholder base, very, very clearly. You know, the message is very clear that I certainly receive in talking to shareholders. This is no longer a question of making sure you've got a glossy sustainability report as part of your thing. This is now the investor base goes into really detailed analysis of what you're saying and how you're demonstrating that it's not just words and you're actually delivering on the promises of whether it's the decarbonisation part, whether it's the safety part, still highly regarded as highly important by the industry, whether it's the social and community part. So the imperatives coming, but I think that we have demonstrated, as you've said, as an industry, we can work together and collaborate to achieve major change. And we like to think of ourselves as, I think, in the industry as able to overcome major challenges. If you look at where we often operating in very remote and harsh environments and delivering fairly amazing engineering outcomes, applying those same skills to the future in terms of carbon reduction, etc. I strongly believe in the industry's capability of doing that, but essential that we drive it through leadership and drive it through collaboration.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's a great point there to acknowledge the industry's you know, I suppose track record to be able to deliver on some of these you know, or to overcome challenges and to also think forward. And as you both mentioned, the number of stakeholders here who are involved is so wide, with very, very important you know, factors in each of them that we must consider, you know, across how we deliver and also work more collectively and closely together. Michael, you've already talked a little bit about the internal carbon pricing mechanism and how that also you know, drives delivery against our outcomes. But obviously it's key also as a core collaboration point or a centre of collaboration. I'm not sure anything that you want to talk about in terms of how this sets up collaboration, both for internal people within the organisation, but external people, and whether that's direct suppliers or even whether that's customers of your product, further downstream, and their drivers for change that impacts more on your business and strategy and delivery.
Well, look, I'll talk. I mean, obviously, we're kicking off with this. This is a relatively new program, and so we're still working out the best way to, the impact of it. But I think already it's showing a number of things. So, firstly, we're able in our interactions with shareholders at IGO to sort of be very open and transparent about the fact that, decarbonisation will have cost associated with it. And so their shareholders' funds are discretionary spending that we're doing to reduce the carbon that technically or legally we're not obliged to do. Although one could argue that at the moment the regulatory and I suppose ESG-led environment, you would argue that it is an obligation for most companies. But nonetheless, we've always sought to reduce costs to become more efficient. We're now saying, yes, we're starting to reduce costs, but we do accept that there's an actual cash cost in addition to other operating costs that we're going to have to spend, whether it's investment or whether it's operating through offsets to achieve our targets, the various emission reduction targets that we have. And so it's quite good because there's a clear transparency around this is the number of tonnes of carbon that our operations are emitting. This is the price per tonne we're putting on it, and that money is available for projects. We're then seeing that our people are starting to get quite engaged in this and starting to look at how, well, all right, there's some funding available for a project that I could come up with. And we're just starting to sort of see the results of some of that. So there's we're seeing a high level of engagement. And I think that all companies are going to have to work out their own sort of approach. I'm involved in, as well as IGO, I think I mentioned in the gold industry, and I see this as, going forward, it's a very important aspect for gold as well, because while copper and lithium and nickel, cobalt are clearly things that have to be mined in order to achieve a net zero, one could argue that gold is less essential to achieving a net zero. So the gold industry has to focus on convincing people that it can be, it can lead in terms of emissions reduction, but B, it can demonstrate the overall advantages of the mining activity, whether it's social and economic development in the countries where where companies are operating in that. And so I think there's each part of the mining industry has different drivers, but overall it's a train that is not stopping, and people have to get aboard.
Thank you. And yes, just some fantastic examples there in your business to not only drive the clean energy metals focus, but also the direct contribution that you make in each of your operations and with your people. I think you've really picked up on an important point around the internal culture that this drives and the impact that people want to have personally. Also at a time where there is a shortage of labour, and more people seem to be focused on wanting to know the company's purpose and having that as a driver to go and work for that company. So it's a really great acknowledgement, Michael, from yourself, your company, and also your shareholders. But maybe we'll move slightly into more discussion just around capability, within the businesses, and I guess the role of leadership and driving increased capability to support the drive for electrification. And maybe, Mark, I'll hand over to you. And you did pick up a bit already about the digital capability that you're driving, focus on neurodiversity and broader diversity. I was wondering if there's something more you can talk to us about your approach on the capability you're starting to see as being needed into the future, and I guess the extension, beyond the digital capability and into other aspects of electrification.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I guess maybe sort of leading into that point regarding capability, I'll start with I guess what yourself and Michael just touched on, and that being around I guess the sort of the purpose, the engagement, the culture. I think that leadership aspect and the capability really starts with having that sort of supporting culture. And if you're going to sort of be making changes, you're going to be sort of challenging the status quo, you're going to be, say, a leader in sort of going with a sort of carbon pricing that Michael spoke about, you really need to have that sort of culture within and allowing people to feel safe to try different things. So I think that's going to be the most critical role in my mind of leadership, providing that right culture and that right environment so people will be comfortable to try and challenge the status quo. In terms of, I guess, the other sort of key capabilities and enablers that sort of link in with, I guess, shifting the industry. Yes, there's going to be the sort of requirement around sort of workforce skills. Maintaining electric vehicles is going to be a core capability, broader sort of digital programming capability, but I think also other skills around sort of systems thinking and integration. And if we look at bringing in electrification and changing the way we work, yes, we still absolutely need the geotech engineers, the sort of mine planners, the mine engineers, but then how do we sort of integrate and have this systems thinking when we bring in different capabilities and different skill sets? So I think really supporting our people in developing sort of and enhancing, and it's not saying it doesn't exist, we've got some great examples of where it does, but really enhancing that I think is going to be sort of critical moving forwards. Already sort of spoke about the diversity, and that's very, very broad sort of to get that sort of thinking. And one of the, I guess, principles internally, we talk about smarter together and really about sort of how do we harness that. And then I guess the sort of final sort of point there, I touched on it a bit earlier as you called out, Michelle, is really having that, I guess, data analytics, sort of digital capability to sort of digitize and look at how we combine people, process and technology together. I think that's going to be really important to capitalise on the opportunity that's ahead of us.
I think the point on culture, Mark, I'd very strongly support it as another investor comment from the last few months is a company that's looking to not mathematically try to quantify culture, but looking for companies where there is a strong culture that can be measured by employee engagement. It can be measured by association of the purpose and values with the strategy, etc. But the clear view, anecdotally at least, that companies with that strong culture, and diversity is a critical part of that, accepting diverse views and and having an inclusive workplace where those diverse views can be shared. But this investor was saying that it's early days, but anecdotally, those companies clearly will outperform in the medium and long term companies where you don't have as strong a culture. So people are starting, it's sort of a virtuous circle in my mind, that people start to focus more and more on ESG issues. The industry performs better in the issues that are very relevant to its the broader group of stakeholders, and that will then result in better financial performance and better shareholder performance, which, as I say, I do look at it as a virtuous circle. So there's a leadership imperative for driving the change as well.
Yeah, I think just to close out that point, Michael, you've both talked individually about what you're doing in your businesses to reposition, but that now collectively, just further to your point, you're talking about how collectively you are helping to reposition the industry as clean and technologically advanced, which is only going to attract more collaboration across all of our stakeholders, better outcomes in our businesses, and also more interest and investment by shareholders. So I think it's a great point to probably finish on here around both company and industry leading work that you're both doing. I think we're probably out of time now. I'm just wondering if either of you want to call out on any final points that you'd like some of the viewers of this video to take away, either points on your company or personally, just around leadership on what is a very important topic at this time and in the globe.
Well, I'll kick off briefly and just say it's a very exciting time to be in the industry, because I think the industry is up for the challenge of decarbonising and being a part of it for our own operations, but providing the metals and the wherewithal and the technology to enable the broader economy to decarbonise. So there's been a lot of change over the 35 years that I've been involved in the industry, but it's probably the most exciting time that I can remember. So I'd leave it there.
Great.
And I certainly echo Michael's comments there. I think very exciting time to be in the industry, and the amount of change that we'll see in the next 5 to 10 years will be sort of quantum above what we've seen in the last number of decades. And I think the only sort of point that I'd leave sort of for viewers that are listening to the discussion is really lean in. And if we're going to change, it's going to be by having people sort of being active, putting ideas on the table, and we'll get some cracking ideas. Some may not work, but lean in again and keep going. So that's the only point I'd encourage. That the only way we'll do it is if everyone's working together and putting ideas in, and not sitting back and just watching. So I think that's critical moving forwards.
Okay, great, thank you. They're fantastic parting comments for the industry abroad, as well as new potential people that want to be involved in industry, or even indirectly. So I wanted to thank you both for your time to share your thoughts on leadership on this important topic. We've covered everything from strategy to direct action that you're both taking, as well as the culture and capability. So really great discussion. And thank you for your time. Before I go, I do want to do a quick shout out just given everyone's participation here on this panel in the Electric Mine Consortium. There is a report coming out, and this is covering a case study in transformative collaboration. So a great approach to delivering on the goals that we have. So thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.